ever wondered what Jesus actually endured during his crucifixion? The soldiers brought out the flagrum, a whip embedded with metal and bone fragments. With the first lash across Jesus' back, skin tore away. By the 30th, his muscles were exposed. By the 40th, you could see his bones. This was just the beginning of his suffering. What you'll learn about crucifixion today isn't taught in Sunday school, but understanding the physical reality of what Jesus chose to endure reveals the true cost of those words. Father, forgive them. Have you ever been so scared that your whole body felt different? Maybe your hands got sweaty, or your heart beat super fast. Now, imagine being so scared that you actually sweat blood. That's what happened to Jesus the night before he died. We want to take you to a quiet garden called Gethsemane. The moon is bright overhead, making shadows dance among the olive trees. Jesus walks here with his friends after their last meal together. But while his disciples fall asleep, Jesus goes a little further to pray alone. He knows exactly what's coming tomorrow: the beating, the mocking, the nails, the cross, and something even worse, being separated from God the Father for the first time ever. Jesus falls to his knees. His prayer is so intense that something strange starts happening to his body. Tiny drops appear on his forehead. At first, they look like normal sweat. But wait, they're red, blood red. This isn't just a story someone made up. Luke, who was a doctor, wrote about it.
And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground.
What Jesus experienced has a name: hematidrosis. It's when the tiny blood vessels around your sweat glands actually break open because you're under so much stress. The blood mixes with your sweat and comes right out through your skin. Doctors today have only seen this happen a few times in all of history. Think about that. The stress Jesus felt was so powerful that his body did something that almost never happens to humans. But why is this important? Because it shows us something amazing. Jesus' suffering didn't just start when the soldiers nailed him to the cross. It started here, in the garden, hours before anyone laid a hand on him. This condition would have made Jesus' skin super sensitive, like a really bad sunburn all over his body. Every touch, every push, every hit that was coming would hurt much worse. His body was already breaking down, and the real pain hadn't even started yet. Have you ever been afraid of a shot at the doctor's office? Your heart races just thinking about that needle, right? Jesus felt fear much stronger than that. He knew exactly what was coming. Not just physical pain, but taking on the sins of everyone who ever lived. As Jesus prays, suddenly the garden fills with light. Torches appear in the distance. Voices get louder. Metal clanks as soldiers march closer. Jesus stands up, his face still wet with bloody sweat. His friends wake up confused and scared. Jesus takes a deep breath, though his body is already weak from what it just went through. He steps forward to meet the soldiers. He could have run away. He could have called angels to save him, but he doesn't. He faces what's coming for us. The soldiers grab Jesus roughly and tie his hands. As they drag him away, no one notices the drops of blood on the ground where he was praying, the first blood Jesus shed for us. But what happens next is even more shocking. The real pain is about to begin. Before we continue to the next part, we want you to think about what Jesus went through. Comment "Thank you, Jesus" below to show how much you appreciate that he chose to go through this suffering for us. Your comment reminds us all that his pain had a purpose, saving us. After a long night with no sleep, Jesus stands in a Roman courtyard. His hands are tied to a post. His back is bare. Roman soldiers laugh nearby. One holds something that makes everyone who sees it shake with fear: the flagrum. This isn't just a normal whip. The Romans created the flagrum for one purpose: to tear human flesh apart. It has several leather straps, but that's not what makes it scary. Tied into each strap are sharp pieces of bone and little metal balls. We want you to understand what happens when this terrible weapon hits skin. The soldiers line up behind Jesus. The first soldier pulls his arm back. The whip makes a whistling sound as it flies through the air. Crack! The first hit lands across Jesus' back. The leather straps wrap around his body. The metal balls smash into his skin, causing deep bruises underneath. At the same time, the sharp bone pieces slice his skin open like tiny knives. Blood appears immediately. Jesus flinches. His body tenses for the next blow. Crack! The second hit lands. More cuts open, more bruising underneath. Jesus' breathing gets faster. The soldiers keep going. Hit after hit after hit. By the time they reach 10 lashes, Jesus' skin is completely torn open. By 20 lashes, we can see through his skin to the layers of fat underneath. By 30 lashes, even that is torn away, exposing the muscles on his back. These muscles, meant to be protected inside our bodies, now quiver in the open air with each new hit. They start to tear too. How many times did they hit Jesus? The Jewish law limited whipping to 39 lashes, but Jesus was in Roman hands now. They often didn't stop until the person was nearly dead. After 40 lashes, Jesus' back doesn't even look human anymore. In some places, you can actually see his ribs and backbone. Blood pours down his legs and pools on the ground. His whole body shakes. This isn't easy to hear, we know, but understanding what Jesus went through helps us see just how much he loved us. The pain would have been unbearable. Each breath would hurt as his chest moved. His body would be going into shock from blood loss and pain. Many people died just from this whipping alone. But this was only the beginning of Jesus' suffering. When the soldiers finish, Jesus can barely stand. They untie his hands from the post, and he falls to his knees. His torn back is now exposed to the open air. Every tiny movement sending waves of pain through his body. The soldiers aren't done with him yet. They pull him to his feet. One of them has an idea for a new game, a way to mock this man who some call a king.
If he's a king, he needs a crown.
One soldier laughs. The crown they have in mind isn't made of gold or jewels. It's made of something that will cause Jesus even more pain than the flagrum. What was this crown? And what happened when they forced it onto Jesus' head? The blood from his back was just the beginning. What comes next shows just how cruel humans can be, and just how much Jesus was willing to endure for us. Have you ever felt so weak you could barely stand? After the Roman whips tore Jesus' back open, his body started to fail in ways we can now understand through modern medicine. We want to show you what was happening inside Jesus' body as he stood silent before Pilate. His body was entering something doctors call hypovolemic shock, a dangerous condition that happens when you lose too much blood too quickly. Think about what blood does. It carries oxygen to every part of your body. It keeps your brain working. It helps your muscles move. Now, imagine losing so much of it that your body can't work right anymore. As Jesus stood there, his heart was racing, trying to pump what little blood remained through his veins. Each heartbeat pushed precious fluid to his brain and organs. But there wasn't enough to go around. Blood was still leaking from hundreds of open wounds across his back and legs. His blood pressure dropped dangerously low. Inside his body, automatic emergency systems kicked in. His kidneys started making less urine to save water. Blood vessels far from his heart and brain started to shrink, trying to keep blood where it was needed most. His breathing got faster and shallower, his body desperately trying to pull in more oxygen with less blood to carry it. An intense thirst took over. Have you ever been so thirsty your mouth felt like sand? This terrible thirst is why, hours later on the cross, Jesus would say, "I thirst." His body was crying out for water to replace all the fluid it had lost. The loss of blood made his thinking foggy too. Standing before Pilate and Herod, Jesus stayed mostly silent. Was this just his choice? Or was his brain also affected by what had happened to his body? Probably both. Then came a new kind of pain. The soldiers took thorns, long, sharp spikes, and made them into a crown. They didn't just set this crown on Jesus' head. They pressed it down, driving the thorns deep into his scalp. Your scalp has more nerve endings than almost anywhere else on your body. When those thorns pierced Jesus' skin, they hit nerves that sent lightning bolts of pain through his head and face. Doctors today call this trigeminal neuralgia, often described as the worst pain humans can feel. It's like having an electric shock inside your face that doesn't stop. While Jesus was dealing with all this, the soldiers weren't done mocking him. They put a purple robe on his torn back. The rough fabric stuck to his open wounds. Then, when they were tired of their game, they ripped it off again, tearing open any wounds that had started to clot. The bleeding started all over again. By this point, Jesus' lips were likely blue from lack of oxygen. His skin was pale and cold with sweat. His body trembled. Walking was becoming nearly impossible. And yet, the worst was still ahead. The soldiers grabbed a heavy wooden beam. They were going to make Jesus carry his own cross through the streets all the way to the place where he would die. How could someone in his condition possibly carry such weight? The answer shows just how far Jesus was willing to go for us. When the Romans executed someone, they didn't just lead them to the killing place. They made them carry part of their own cross through the city streets. It was about shame as much as suffering. We want to take you to those streets now. After beating Jesus, mocking him, and pushing thorns into his head, the soldiers laid a heavy wooden beam across his raw, bleeding shoulders. This wasn't the whole cross, just the crossbar, called the patibulum, but it was no small piece of wood. This rough-cut beam weighed between 75 and 100 pounds. That's like carrying a third grader on your back, even for a healthy person. This would be hard. For Jesus, whose body was already in shock from blood loss, it was almost impossible. They tied the beam to Jesus' arms to keep it from falling. Then they shoved him forward, beginning a walk that would cover about 1/3 of a mile through Jerusalem's winding streets. With the first step, the rough wood dug into Jesus' open wounds. Every movement sent the splintered beam grinding against his exposed muscles and flesh. The weight pushed directly down on the very parts of his body that had been shredded by the whips. Blood that had started to clot now flowed freely again. Each step meant more blood loss, more pain, more weakness. By this point, Jesus was severely anemic. His body had lost so much blood that his muscles weren't getting the oxygen they needed. That's why weightlifters breathe hard. When they lift muscles need oxygen to work. Jesus' muscles were starving for oxygen that wasn't there. The streets were crowded with people watching. Some cried, others mocked. The soldiers pushed Jesus to keep moving. The path wasn't flat. Jerusalem is built on hills. Every uphill section drained what little strength remained. Then it happened. Jesus' legs buckled under the weight. He fell forward, unable to catch himself, with his arms tied to the beam. His face and thorn-crowned head slammed into the hard stone street. More blood, more pain. The soldiers yanked him back to his feet.
Keep moving!
A few more steps, another fall. Each time, the beam crashed down with him, driving the wood harder into his wounds. Each time, the crown of thorns dug deeper into his scalp. After several falls, even the hardened Roman soldiers could see Jesus wouldn't make it to the execution site this way. They needed him alive when they reached Golgotha. Dying on the cross was the punishment, not dying on the way there. That's when they grabbed a man from the crowd, Simon from Cyrene. Simon wasn't just a random Bible character. He represents the moment when Jesus' body physically could not go on without help. The weight was literally killing him. Simon took the beam, likely still stained with Jesus' blood. Jesus could now walk more freely, but each step was still torture. His back exposed to the hot sun, his head pounding with pain, his body fighting to stay conscious. By the time they reached the small hill called Golgotha, Jesus had lost so much blood that the Romans knew they had to work quickly. If they didn't get him on the cross soon, he might die before they could complete their grim task. At Golgotha, an even worse suffering waited. The Romans were experts at keeping victims alive on the cross for maximum suffering. What they did next shows why crucifixion was considered the most painful death humans ever created. When the soldiers reached Golgotha with Jesus, they weren't gentle. They threw him down onto the wooden crossbeam that Simon had carried. His torn back hit the rough wood, sending fresh waves of pain through his body. Now, it was time for the nails. We want to clear up something many people get wrong about crucifixion. In most paintings and movies, you see nails going through Jesus' palms, but Roman soldiers knew better. The soft tissue of the palms can't support a person's weight. The body would simply tear through and fall. Instead, they positioned Jesus' arms on the crossbeam and took out iron spikes about 7 inches long, nearly as long as your hand. Each nail was thick, with a square shaft that tapered to a point. The soldier placed the first nail at Jesus' wrist, just where the hand meets the arm. This spot wasn't random. Whether they knew it or not, the Romans had found the perfect place to create maximum pain. Right through this area runs the median nerve, one of the main nerve highways that controls feeling and movement in your thumb and first 3 fingers. When the hammer struck the nail, driving it through flesh and nerve, Jesus felt a kind of pain that's hard to describe. Today, doctors call it causalgia, a burning electric pain that shoots up the entire arm. It's like touching a live wire, but the shock never stops. Medical experts describe this as among the most intense pains a human body can feel. The same happened to his other wrist. Then the soldiers lifted the crossbeam with Jesus attached and mounted it onto the vertical post already in the ground. His feet were next. They crossed one foot over the other and drove another large spike through both feet at once, hitting more major nerves. Now came a moment that damaged Jesus' body in a new way. When the soldiers raised the cross upright and dropped it into its hole in the ground, the sudden jolt was too much for Jesus' shoulder joints. The full weight of his body pulled down on his nailed wrists, and both shoulders dislocated. Ligaments tore. The arms stretched several inches longer than normal. But the worst part of crucifixion wasn't the nails or dislocated shoulders. It was breathing. The way Jesus hung on the cross made each breath a battle. When his body sagged down, his chest muscles were stretched tight, making it impossible to exhale fully. Carbon dioxide started building up in his blood. To breathe out properly, Jesus had to push up using his nail-pierced feet, lifting his body weight to relax his chest muscles. Each time he pushed up, his raw back scraped against the wooden post. Each time he pushed up, the nails tore at the nerves in his feet, but he had no choice: push up or suffocate. This terrible cycle repeated with every breath. Push up in agony to exhale. Sag down in agony from the nails. Push up again for hours. As time passed, Jesus' body weakened. Each push became harder than the last. His dislocated shoulders made the movement even more painful. Muscle cramps set in from the strange position and lack of oxygen. Blood loss and dehydration made every movement a supreme effort. The Romans had created the perfect torture, a death where the victim's own need to breathe became the source of their agony. They didn't kill Jesus directly. They created conditions where his body would fight itself to death. And yet, through all this physical suffering, Jesus remained focused on others. He spoke to the thief beside him, promising paradise. He asked God to forgive the very people who put him there. He made sure his mother would be cared for. But the worst was still to come. After hours on the cross, Jesus' body was reaching its physical limits. Every system was failing, and soon he would cry out words that revealed a suffering even deeper than physical pain. "6 hours. That's how long Jesus hung on the cross. By this point, his body was fighting a war on many fronts and losing all of them. We want to explain what was happening inside Jesus during those final hours. Remember those dislocated shoulders from when the cross dropped into place. With each breath, the stretched arms pulled the subclavian artery, a major blood vessel, against his first rib. Like rubbing a balloon against a rough surface, the artery began to tear. Blood slowly leaked from this torn artery into the space between his lungs and chest wall, a condition doctors call tension hemothorax. As this space filled with blood, it squeezed his lungs from the outside, making each breath shallower than the last. Meanwhile, Jesus had lost so much fluid that his blood was becoming harder for his weakened heart to pump. Dehydration concentrated what little blood remained in his vessels. Have you ever tried to drink a very thick milkshake through a straw? That's what Jesus' heart was trying to do, push thick blood through narrowing vessels. The hardest battle was for oxygen. Each breath required Jesus to push up on his nail-pierced feet, scraping his raw back against the wood. As the hours passed, his strength faded. He couldn't push up as high or for as long. This meant he couldn't exhale fully. When you can't exhale enough, carbon dioxide builds up in your bloodstream. This causes painful muscle cramps, first in the legs, then spreading throughout the body. The cramps made it even harder to push up for the next breath. It was a deadly cycle. By the 6th hour, Jesus' kidneys had likely shut down completely. His heart was struggling to maintain rhythm. His lungs could only take in small sips of air. The combined effects of blood loss, dehydration, exhaustion, and traumatic shock pushed every system in his body toward complete failure. Then, something happened that showed Jesus' suffering went beyond physical pain. He cried out,
my God, why have you forsaken me?"
In that moment, as he bore the spiritual weight of humanity's sin, Jesus experienced a separation from God the Father that brought a whole new level of anguish, one we can barely understand. Shortly after, Jesus spoke his final words.
"It is finished."
Then he gave up his spirit. His body had reached its absolute physical limit. No human could have endured more. To make sure he was dead, a Roman soldier thrust a spear into Jesus' side. What came out tells us a lot about how he died. John's Gospel records that blood and water flowed from the wound. Modern medicine recognizes this as evidence of pericardial effusion fluid gathering around the heart from extreme stress and trauma. This scientific detail, written thousands of years before modern medicine, confirms the severity of Jesus' suffering. His heart was literally breaking under the physical and spiritual strain. What's remarkable isn't just how much Jesus suffered, but that he chose it. At any point, he could have called angels to rescue him. He had healed others. He could have healed himself, but he stayed on that cross, experiencing the full range of human suffering because it was the only way to bridge the gap between God and humanity. The medical evidence shows Jesus didn't just die symbolically. He experienced a perfect storm of the worst physical pain possible, and he did it willingly, with you in mind. But this isn't where the story ends. 3 days later, something happened that changed everything. The broken body that had experienced total failure would experience something else entirely, total restoration, and that would change the world forever. When doctors look at what happened to Jesus, they're amazed by one thing. He experienced almost every type of pain a human body can feel. Think about that for a moment. Not just one kind of pain, but all of them together. We want to help you truly see what Jesus went through. First, there was the nerve pain when nails hit the median nerve in his wrists and the plantar nerves in his feet. This wasn't just regular pain. It was like lightning bolts shooting through his body with every movement. Then came the tissue damage. His back torn open by the flagrum, exposing muscle and bone. His scalp pierced by thorns, sending pain signals from one of the most sensitive parts of our body. Joint pain followed when his shoulders dislocated under his own weight, tearing ligaments and stretching tendons beyond their limits. With each breath, these damaged joints moved, creating fresh waves of agony. Blood loss led to hypovolemic shock, his body shutting down as vital organs lacked oxygen. And through it all, the slow suffocation as his lungs fought for each breath, requiring him to push up on wounded feet just to exhale. What makes this even more remarkable? Through all of this, Jesus stayed aware and focused on others. He forgave the very soldiers who nailed him there. He made sure his mother would be cared for after he was gone. He promised paradise to the thief beside him. This wasn't just a death. It was the most complete experience of human suffering ever voluntarily chosen by anyone. Jesus didn't just talk about love. He showed exactly how far love will go to rescue what it values. When we understand the medical reality of what Jesus endured, we see his sacrifice in a whole new light. This wasn't just spiritual symbolism. It was love made physical in the most painful way possible. You've heard what happened to Jesus' body, but do you know what his final words really meant? There's a shocking truth behind what Jesus said in his last moments that most people completely miss. When Jesus cried out,
my God, why have you forsaken me?"
something darker and deeper was happening than most people realize. This wasn't just a man in pain. This was God experiencing something that had never happened before in all eternity. What could make Jesus, who had walked on water and calmed storms with a word, cry out in such agony? It wasn't the nails. It wasn't a crown of thorns. It was something much worse. Now, we will reveal what Jesus' final words actually meant. You'll discover the spiritual pain that made the physical torture look mild by comparison. This missing piece changes everything about how we understand the cross. Don't miss this crucial part of the story. The physical suffering was just the surface of what Jesus endured. Without understanding his final words, you're missing the most important part of why his sacrifice matters. Click the video appearing on your screen now to discover what really happened in those final moments. This hidden truth will change how you see Jesus' sacrifice forever.